Eagles 29, Commanders 18. They get 2 back-to-back wins now. And I know it's the Raiders and the Commanders, but considering they were 0-3 before that, they needed this spark. Now they go and play Buffalo next week. That's where the test really comes. That'll be a good game. I'm looking forward to it. I think this Eagles team is good, man. I think they are. The talent is there. They're coming off a Super Bowl win. They have all the pieces. They just haven't put it together this year at points. I think offensively, for sure. And that starts and really ends with Jalen Hurts. You know, it is the quarterback who is leading this offense. And I know there are other pieces to the puzzle, the Patullo issues, right? The Saquon Barkley on the offensive line underproducing. The receivers haven't necessarily been that great. I'm talking specifically about A.J. Brown right now. But Jalen Hurts really is the guy who's steering the ship here, right? He's going to take all the blame and should receive all the credit too. And that's what we're going to do on the podcast today. You know, I've talked about Jalen's arm all year, saying I don't necessarily think he has an elite arm. I stand on that take, but these past few weeks he's looked really good. And the thing with Hurts, what you have to realize, probably the most talked about NFL athlete in the media yearly, I would say. Like, there are some guys, Mahomes, obviously, Josh Allen, but I think Jalen Hurts, the most heavily debated athlete in the NFL. Here's the thing. Jalen Hurts only has 2 types of people. Jalen Hurts only has haters or superfans. Nothing in between. And I think you should be neutral. I think we should be neutral with Jalen Hurts. I'm a realist. I try to stay neutral with my opinion, and I try to spit only facts about Jalen Hurts. I try to stay in the middle, support him when the support is deserving, but also I'll critique him when there are things to critique. The media will blow over these past 2 performances because he played bad teams. I'm not going to do that. I'm giving him credit. He has balled out these last 2 weeks, and he's thrown the ball really well. But it's also the Commanders and the Raiders. So we're not going to blow it out of proportion, but we're going to give him credit here. Hurts has some admirable qualities. He's not an emotionally driven quarterback. He remains steady regardless of the situation, and we all know the kind of player he is in the clutch, in the playoffs, in the big moments. So yes, Jalen Hurts has some admirable qualities. Absolutely. I also see some drawbacks in his game. I don't think his arm is up to the caliber of the elites. I don't think he has an A-tier arm. And that's okay. Philly fans take it as hate when I say Jalen Hurts isn't a top 3 QB or he doesn't necessarily have an elite arm. I'm just assessing the quarterback that I see. This is not hate-driven. I'm being realistic. He's played 2 phenomenal games, but before that, it didn't look too good. And it hasn't really looked all that consistent and all that great all year long. The offense has been in a huge slump, I would say, for the majority of the year. So what drives me crazy about these Philly fans is they'll come out after games like this and say Jalen Hurts is generational. Jalen Hurts is the system. Jalen Hurts really is the guy. Listen, I don't blame you for supporting your quarterback, but to use words like generational, like, let's draw it back a little bit, just a little bit. Jalen Hurts is a top 10, top 8 quarterback. Absolutely. But to get angry when someone says he's not top 3, doesn't have an elite arm, you're being unrealistic. You're missing the flaws in his game. And I still think if Philly has to rely on his arm throughout the playoffs, that gets concerning. What I do love about Jalen Hurts, what I do love about Jalen Hurts' last 2 games is the way that he's played to his strengths. And maybe this is on Patullo and Sirianni, game planning and understanding who Jalen Hurts is. Finally, feels like we go through this cycle over and over again. They understand who he is. They play to his strengths. Then they go overboard. Then they rely heavily on his arm. And then we repeat the cycle. We're at this point now, these past few games, that they are leaning into his pros. The stuff that Jalen Hurts does really well at. He's best when he can feed off a steady run game. And he can hit his moment shot. And he can use his legs. He's a threat in the RPO game. And that's where he causes defenses the most trouble. But to sit back there like a pocket quarterback, it's not his game. Now, I know he threw, 32, 35 pass attempts this evening. That's great. He won the game. But more times than not, Philly isn't producing at a high rate when Jalen Hurts has to do that. That's not a knock on Jalen Hurts. It's just the athlete that he is, the quarterback that he is. You have to play to your quarterback strengths. And I feel like these last 2 weeks, they've done that. Now, whether that's because they've played trash teams who aren't sniffing the playoffs, or they're finally coming around on this offense, I don't know. But I feel like this game was really crucial to the success of this offense, to this team, to get back in rhythm. Find some confidence in what they're doing. So I'd like to come out here and say, yes, Jalen Hurts has had a few phenomenal games. And I'm going to shout him out here. He's played really good, and I have no questions or concerns about him heading into the playoffs. What I am concerned about is Philly not continuing to establish the run game like they have with Barkley. Tonight was a picture-perfect example of how Philly should run their offense. It should be Barkley. It should be Bigsby. They should be run-focused and let the pass attack feed off that. That's where they thrive. And when you get into those cold games in the winter, in the playoffs, you're going to want a well-established, hard-working run game that you can rely on for 3 to 4 games here. And that'll help you win another Super Bowl. Because at the end of the day, Saquon Barkley will make or break Philly's season. Those are just the facts. If they can't run the ball, they will not win anything this season. Entering the game, Saquon Barkley was 4th in running backs tackled for loss and 39th in yards per attempt for running backs with minimum 50 carries on the year. That's not nearly good enough for a reigning Offensive Player of the Year. Because this Philly offense runs through Barkley and runs on the ground. And Barkley needs to be at the forefront of the game plan heading into the playoffs for them to win anything. Because Jalen Hurts, I don't believe that his arm can do it for 4 straight games against elite defenses. Maybe not in the NFC all the time, but in the Super Bowl for sure. If you meet a team like the Broncos or the Texans or the Patriots, teams with great defenses, it's going to be hard when they take away the run to say, Jalen Hurts, we're going to need your arm here all day long. He can do it for 1 game, 2 games, but you're going to need to establish the run. And again, this is not a knock on Jalen Hurts. It's just playing to the strengths of your team. What's the reality in the playoffs? What are the situations? Well, cold games, physical games, lots of contact. You're going to need a run game. In the cold games, you'll want to lean on your reigning Offensive Player of the Year. And he ultimately makes Jalen Hurts a way better passer. He takes the pressure off his arm and allows him to sling the rock with confidence only when he needs to. Not because Patullo wants him to throw 40 times a game, which is completely outside of his boundaries as an athlete. It just doesn't make sense for him to do that. I don't watch a lot of basketball, but the way I would describe it is to ask Steph Curry to not shoot any threes and drive to the basket every single time. I'm pretty sure Steph's specialty is shooting the 3. Again, I'm not a big NBA fan, but that's my comparison here. You got to play to the strengths of Jalen Hurts. Let him use his legs. Let him throw the rock only when you need it. Perfect world, 20 to 25 times a game. Establish the run game. Feed off that with Jalen Hurts. Get him to use his legs. That's where you kill the defenses. That's really what we saw tonight with Malik Willis. And we'll talk about that right away with the Bears and the Packers. Now, Philly as a whole, we're talking this whole team heading into the playoffs because, listen, regardless of how you feel about this team, they're not in a bad spot, okay? Philly has as good of a shot as anybody in the NFC to win the Super Bowl and come out alive as the representative in the NFC to compete to win another Super Bowl and go back-to-back. I actually predicted for them to go back-to-back, and I don't think it's a bad prediction right now. But the thing I'll say is, like, the fans, chill out a little bit, you know? Relax on the Philly is back chance. these were big for your confidence, but now you need to play some good teams. And now you need to keep the offense rolling. It was the Commanders and the Raiders. This should have been expected. You needed these wins for confidence, but now you need to continue this. Now you need to continue this flow against better teams. And who better to do it against than my Buffalo Bills this week? I'm pumped up. I'm pumped up to see this Philly franchise, this fan base riled up, heated up. They've looked good these last 2 weeks. To go see Josh Allen, to match up against number 17. Last time they played, it was a great game. Whoever wins, I mean, they're both going to the playoffs, but it'll be a good test for Philly to see, like, okay, you dominated the Raiders and the Commanders, and we know you can play with the top-level teams, but can you consistently be a highly productive offense? We'll see. This is going to be a big week for them. The Commanders, on the other hand, I mean, listen, I think I said it to start the season. I'm pretty sure we talked about the Commanders in the preseason episode, wrapping up to get ready for the year. They really screwed themselves. You know, Washington really turned into a retirement home. I don't get it. Like, they just went after old geezers after old geezers. It was like Pokemon, collect them all. Like, do whatever you can. They're the oldest team in the league, and they've fallen apart. Like, who would have guessed? The oldest team in the league is all sitting on IR right now. This was expected when all your stars were aging out. Who are you banking on? Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, even Terry McLaurin, who you just gave the bag to, turned 30 in September. This is an old team that was already aging out last year. Last year was a fluke with the Commanders. The only guy you can rely on now is Jaden Daniels, who is not going to fix this franchise. You're going to need a few good drafts here to start building properly, because the shot was last season, and now you're falling way down in the rankings. And I don't even think next year is in the picture right now. I love Jaden Daniels, but you're not keeping him healthy, and you're putting him in terrible situations to play when he's still injured. I didn't understand that all year long. Don't get me wrong. Last year was electric with this team, and what they did, that run was awesome, but that was the opportunity, and it felt like they had all the momentum, and they met a brick wall in the Philadelphia Eagles in the conference championship, and ever since then, they've plummeted. I still think Jaden Daniels is one of those guys. Like, he can be truly elite in the league. He has the potential to do so. He matches the prototypical quarterback in today's game, which I talked about a few episodes ago, how that's changed from the 2010s decade now to the 2020s. He's elusive, athletic, throws the ball really well. He was great in the pocket last year, under control, very composed, very accurate passer. But this year with the injury problems, not so much. We didn't get to see the sample size that we did last year, and they're certainly not going to the playoffs. So now it's on Washington and that front office to say, hey, we got to get these old guys the hell out of here. Debo, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner. I mean, all-time greats for sure. Ring of Honor guys, arguably Hall of Fame guys. Absolutely. But at the same time, you got to cut ties. You got to look at the future, say, hey, we got a young franchise quarterback. Let's start building. We got our guy in Terry McLaurin, who we can keep for a few more years here under contract. We just gave money to. He can help Jaden's development, but let's start building around him. Let's build up the O-line. Let's build up the defense. Let's get a few more weapons around him and start pushing for 2028, 2029 to be our year. Because you really got to rebuild from the bottom up when you got a roster at the oldest in the league. I think 28 and a half or something like that. You got to get younger. You got to. The Packers, I believe, the youngest team in the league. Yeah, they're injured right now, but look how much promise they got now. Look where their future is headed with Jordan Love and the young receivers that they got and the young defense that's been balling. Two very different situations, and I think that's where the Commanders now have to trend, knowing that they got their franchise guy. Keep him healthy and start building for a few years down the road to be your time.